Hello and welcome to the Sensibly Speaking podcast. This is Chris Shelton, the critical thinker at large, coming at you with show number 92. This is brought to you on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, as well as here on YouTube. And as you guys may notice on YouTube, we are doing this audio only this week. Some of the reason for that is because we are going portable this week. I am on location for the first time ever with my Zoom H5 and my lav mics here, and I am hooked up with Jeffrey Augustine. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Chris, pleasure to be here as always.
Awesome. Yeah, we're enjoying the LA weather.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, it's gorgeous out here. Of course, LA is not exactly my favorite place to be anymore, but it's always a good time out here. Hooking up with some great friends and stuff and having a really good time working on a couple projects that I'm just going to totally tease right now. That will be coming in the not too distant future. Couple things I'm out here working on that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. But let's get to the podcast. Jeff, we had you on just a few weeks ago. We talked about some great stuff, and people were anxious to have you back on, so I'm glad we had this opportunity.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and get into it with, first off now, Scientology Money Project, you've done some really, really outstanding work on the legal front. And from the corporate, piercing the corporate veil, getting into that whole aspect, IRS work. So let's talk about what is, from a legal standpoint now, with contracts and all that kind of thing, what is a Scientologist?
Great question, Chris. My interest began with the question. It's a very fundamental question, but it's very subtle. Mm-hmm. Scientology has variously claimed over the years that it has 12 million members.
Yes.
8 million members.
That's right.
Now, in the 1990s, Heber Jensch, president Church of Scientology International, said in a court proceeding that 8 million number he gave counted everyone who's ever purchased a Scientology book or done a course.
Right.
Okay, so let's box the Church of Scientology in, okay? A Scientologist is not anyone who's ever bought a book or done a course. That's only someone who's been exposed to Scientology.
Correct.
Okay, so let's deduct that out.
Good.
Because I got to tell you, I know many people who bought copies of Dianetics when they did a personality test, and they bought those copies just to get the hell out of the org.
Oh, completely. I met plenty of those people.
It's almost like ransom. You got to buy something to escape.
Right. That's right.
To get back to your home planet.
That's right.
So those people are not Scientologists.
Yep.
Now, a functional definition of a Scientologist is someone who applies the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology.
I was just about to mention that, in fact, because that's how we talked to ourselves when I was in the church as to what a Scientologist was.
Okay. Now, that's a fair definition of a Scientologist. Okay, but now let's go to the legal, technical, as far as the church is concerned.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, nobody belongs to the Church of Scientology International because it's a corporation. Church of Scientology International, CSI, is a corporation, and it's a non-membership corporation.
And that's an important distinction right there, because I know immediately people are going to go, well, why can't they be members? What does that mean?
Well, a non-membership corporation, and they're common, they just don't have members. They have a board of directors, but they do not have members.
Okay, good. Okay,
so,
and this is all from a legal standpoint now.
It's all in writing. It's all in Scientology Money Project. I'll give you footnotes for your program.
Sure,
notes. Yeah. And this is important. So how does the Church of Scientology have members?
Yeah.
And please note again, when I talk about the Church of Scientology, I'm talking about the Church of Scientology International.
Good.
The Church of Scientology is a term of convenience used to refer to all the churches in their hierarchy.
Yep.
Our franchise system.
Yep.
How does the Church of Scientology have members? Well, it has a membership association that's called the International Association of Scientologists.
That's right. That's right.
Or the IAS.
Yes.
Now, the IAS is an unincorporated membership association.
Oh.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, for one, it can't have a bank account. It cannot transact business.
Really?
No, it can't.
Okay, this is very interesting because it's counterintuitive. I know that a lot of people listening to this are going to like, whoa, wait a minute, doesn't the IAS do all this fundraising? Where does that money go if they don't have a bank account?
Okay, this is where the Church of Scientology is designed to be very deceptive.
Yes.
L. Ron Hubbard said, and Ray Jeffrey quoted this in his opening brief in the Rathbun case. When you're on the left-hand side of the horse, make him look like you're on the right-hand side of the horse. When you're on the right-hand side, make him look at you like you're on the left, so they'll, shoot at you. The point is, it's misleading.
Okay.
So how can an unincorporated membership association do anything? Let's say you and I both own Corvettes.
Okay.
And we had a couple other friends who own Corvettes.
Yep.
So we had Chris and Jeff's Corvette Club. Now, we don't have a bank account. We don't have any legal standing. We might meet at the local, burger stand on Friday nights and show off our Corvettes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But we have no legal standing.
Okay.
So in order to do anything, the IAS has an operating arm called the International Association of Scientologist Administrations. IASA.
Yes, and those guys have offices. Actually, they moved from the Freewinds to here in Los Angeles.
Correct.
That's right. They're right down the street.
And they're staffed by
Sea Org members.
Bingo. Now,
the glue that ties it all together.
Now, who's in charge of the Sea Org?
David Miscavige, Captain David Miscavige.
Correct.
That's right.
So, in order to have a bank account or bank accounts or a slush fund, whatever you want to call it, sign contracts, stage events, you have Sea Org members in the operating arm of the IASA.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's how the Church of Scientology has memberships to the IES.
Okay.
Now, how does a Scientologist become an IES member? Or where does it all begin?
Yeah, they get a free 6-month membership to start when they walk in, and that gives them the person's identity into their central files, and they then pursue the person for membership fees.
Okay, but let's back it up further.
Okay.
Okay, now, we take, I'm going to take a mythical guy named Joe Dokes.
Great.
Hubbard used that name in some of his
All the
works.
time,
Joe
yes.
Dokes. Okay, so we're going to take Joe Dokes. He's a WOG.
Yep.
Off the streets.
That's right.
WOG is a Scientology term for non-Scientologist. Dead in the head. They call them
raw meat.
Homo saps. Okay.
That's right.
So Joe Dokes is on Vermont and Sunset, and a body router says, "Would you like to see a film?" Joe says, "Sure, why not?"
Yep.
The orientation film is very crucial.
Ah.
Legally speaking.
Oh.
Here's the pith of the matter, Chris.
Okay.
In America, you have the right to practice any religion you want or not practice.
Correct.
Now, that's called consent. Consent belongs to you. You can consent to join a church or not. What the Church of Scientology wants you to do, why they want you to see the orientation film, is once you sign it and you're interested, say, like, I'd like to pursue this, you have to sign a contract saying, I've seen the orientation film.
That's right, you do.
You do sign it.
That's right, and it doesn't even seem like a really big deal at the time. You're like, yeah, I saw a film, so what?
Yeah, I'll sign this.
That's right.
But the contract says that you agree that Scientology is a religion.
Exactly.
So this is the first step of getting you in. You've agreed they're a religion. You've consented that they're a religion.
That's right.
Now, secondly, you get interested in saying, yeah, I'd like to do some auditing. I'd like to do the purification rundown or life improvement or a course, communication course. Now, the church won't let you do this until you sign a membership services contract. That means you agree to be governed by their laws and rules, and you're basically giving your consent to be governed by Scientology.
Another very, very important step.
Well, see, under First Amendment protections, Scientology's subtly doing a couple things on their intake procedure or their induction procedure. They're getting you behind the First Amendment. They're keeping themselves there.
Right.
Now, you basically have agreed to be a Scientologist legally. You've given your consent to be governed.
Yep.
Now, then that way you can do the purification, rundown, life repair. But you sign this contract. What's very interesting is the next contract you sign is a spiritual assistance contract. Basically, this says if you go type 3 or if you go crazy inside of Scientology, the church can, at its own discretion, lock you up.
Right, because they have their whole procedure for dealing with people who have had what they call psychotic breaks or a psychotic episode. And this is according to their definitions and ideas of what that is.
Well, Lisa McPherson is the most famous case.
That's right.
Okay, Lisa McPherson was a Scientologist, an OT. She went insane, got out of her car in a street in Florida, right near the Flagland base, stripped naked on the public street, screamed that she needed help.
Yep.
The police came, paramedics, they transported her to the emergency room of a hospital, and they were going to do a 72-hour lockdown. Now, in California, that's called a 5150.
Okay.
It's in Florida, the Baker Act.
Right. Correct.
Okay. So every state has a law where you can lock people up.
Hold them, because you're basically seeing whether they're safe or a danger to themselves or other people.
Correct. It's a psychiatric evaluation, state mandated. Now, because Lisa had signed a certain document, Scientologists showed up with the emergency room. This document says, in the event I'm hospitalized, I don't want to have any psychiatric treatment. I expect members of my religion to come and remove me and treat me spiritually because I don't believe in psychiatry. They used that document. The hospital had to let her go.
That's right.
And they locked her up in a hotel room at the Fort Harrison.
That's right. And proceeded to basically, kill her because they did not know what they were doing.
No, they didn't. They're medically unqualified. But the point is, it's not illegal in America to give up your rights, to voluntarily surrender your rights. In 1964 policy letter that's obscure, L. Ron Hubbard said, one of our successful actions in stopping attacks is to get people to sign waivers. And he said a waiver was the voluntary surrender of your rights.
Which is a sad but true statement.
Well, many people say, how can the church do that? They can't do that. Well, yes, they can. If you give your consent to be governed by a church, any church, not just Scientology, and you waive your rights, they can do a lot of things. That's the dark side of the First Amendment that people do not understand.
That's right.
How brutal it can be. So you sign this spiritual assistance thing. And the last one you sign, now when you get auditing or any other course, especially auditing, the church is going to keep PC folders, pre-clear folders.
That's right. That's right.
They call it a record of your spiritual progress.
That is the term they use, yes.
So you go into auditing and you say, my mother beat me when I was young. And then they'll audit you about being beaten, the engrams, being yelled at, you're no good, Timmy, I wish you were dead. And then the emotional damage of that, they clean up. It's basically psychotherapy.
In a way.
On a meter.
Yeah, in a way.
Well, what's interesting, in 1952, Hubbard, when he discovered the E-meter, he wrote a bulletin called The E-meter Gives New Life to Freud's Process of Free Association.
That's right.
But nevertheless, they're recording it.
Exactly. They're keeping written notes, and often they will video the sessions as well.
Yeah, they video it and film it.
That's right.
Okay, so you're on camera talking about your mother beat you, you masturbated, you had sex with, however many people you had, you did this, you embezzled money.
That's right. Nothing is off limits in an auditing session.
No, and in confession, under the old idea confession is good for the soul.
Yeah.
It may be, but it's not good for the Scientologists because they're keeping these records.
Exactly.
And you have to get off your withholds.
You are expected to be completely open and honest about every single aspect of your life, your thoughts and dreams into the future, but more importantly, what you've done.
Yes. So if you've lied, cheated, or stolen, had affairs, maybe been involved in drunk driving, whatever.
That's right.
Okay. You get this off in session, they record it.
Yep.
Now, you sign a contract that these records do not belong to you. You have no right to see them. You'll never have any right to see them. In fact, you have to agree that your heirs, should you die, never have any right to see them. The church owns them in perpetuity. So you'll never get those records. So the church basically legally owns every confession you have.
Right.
You'll never get your folders back. I get asked that a lot by Scientologists, can I get my folders back? The answer, no, you can't. However, in the Laura Dykeman case, she got her folders back because she proved they really weren't private.
That's right, because she showed that it was, what, 148 or something odd number of people had been exposed, had access to her folder, been able to open it up, despite the fact that it's, says priest penitent privilege confidential file stamped right on the front of it. All these people had free access to it, and therefore, hardly what you would call priest penitent privilege.
Right. Okay, so you signed the 4 contracts.
Yep.
And you mentioned on our last show, as a Sea Org executive, you had access to PC folders.
Oh, all the time. I was over the technical delivery of auditing and training for the entire West US. So if I wanted to, I could walk over across the street to the American St. Hill or the Advanced Organization, and the only thing that was keeping me from being able to open a folder was not somebody would stop me from having access to it, except for if it was confidential OT levels that I hadn't done yet.
Oh, I see.
But not because it was confidential priest penitent privilege, because as an executive I was overseeing the auditing delivery, so it was my job to go in and open up folders and look at them and see whatever I wanted to, whenever I wanted to.
You could pull Joe Jokes' folder and read everything on him.
Anytime I wanted.
Know all the dirt.
That's right. And in fact, there were conversations that would happen all the time. And the places where auditing is delivered in Scientology are called Hubbard Guidance Centers, or HGCs. Another of their famous acronyms. And in the HGC are various staff who administer the delivery of the auditing. And all the time there were conversations happening about confidential priest penitent privilege information that people were laughing about, making jokes about, incredulous about. Could you believe this guy? I can't believe he did that, sort of thing. And of course, people are people. They spread this stuff around.
No, it's one of the worst things in Scientology.
Oh yeah.
Rumors go around Celebrity Center.
Oh. Yeah.
Fly around Celebrity Center. I know many people who've left the Celebrity Center, and the rumors would fly around even to public.
Oh yeah.
But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you've done, the Scientology intake system is designed to get you to voluntarily surrender your civil rights and legal protections.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, now these can be argued to be contracts of adhesion, where they have all the power and you have none, and they are contracts of adhesion, but they're enforceable until somebody goes to court and argues and proves they're, so you sort of enter Scientology at your own risk. Now, once you want services, you have to sign another contract. So if I wanted to do the grades, I pay my money and I sign a contract with an org. So let's say if I wanted to do grade 0 up through clear, I would sign a contract with an org for those services.
Like Church of Scientology in Miami.
Yep. I'd sign a contract, pay them more money.
Yep.
Now what happens, because the Church of Scientology has no members, I'm a member of the IAS. Correct? Because at that point you have to join the IAS to be a member.
That's right.
So like you said, you get a free 6 month, but they really want you to buy a lifetime membership.
That's right.
And so you're an IAS member. You're entering a building owned by the Church of Scientology International, and a member of the Sea Org comes in to audit you.
Okay.
The Sea Org is also an unincorporated membership association. In fact, it doesn't even have members. All it is a pledge, as we've covered.
That's right.
But a Sea Org member has signed a contract, say, with Miami Org.
Okay.
So,
yep.
One member of an unincorporated association, IES, meets another member of an unincorporated membership association.
And just to be clear about this also applies to Scientology staff members. Wouldn't have to be a Sea Org member, but it's a contracted staff member who's contracted with Church of Scientology of Miami for, a pledge of 2.5 or 5 years of service.
Correct. So
yeah,
so
same difference.
Basically, it's very legally confusing until you get it down on paper.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you get your services done, they keep your files, you pay your money. Now, this gets to where what we were talking about before the show that I think is so interesting. You've described the 3 levels our caste system, what we want to talk about today.
Yeah, that's sort of the hierarchy of.
Yeah, what is
of
the
it.
hierarchy in the Church of Scientology?
Breaks down really simply. There's your public level Scientologist, your entry level guy, or your guy who's literally just pays my money, do my services, right? He has a job, he has a house, he has a car, he has a family, whatever. He's just a public Scientologist, right? So he partakes of the services and he pays his money to do that. And as we'll talk about, there's other things that go on later on, but that's the basic level of it. The next level of commitment to the cause of Scientology is a staff member, and they sign a legally binding contract that they are volunteer workers. They're not expecting any real remuneration. They are giving of their time to the church, and in exchange, the church will give them free auditing and training services as a result, and that's really all they get out of it. And there's I think since I left, they put in some contracts as well for staff members about not speaking ill of the organization at any time, from here to in perpetuity and all that. But that's being a staff member, and it's an increase in responsibility level and dedication to the church and the church's causes. And then the highest level, the most committed, are the C organization members. And maybe that's not it's not at its own incorporated body, but it is a higher level of personal commitment where they sign this, it's not a legal thing, it's a pledge of commitment for 1 billion years. They believe it really is signing over themselves spiritually for 1 billion years. Make no mistake, that's not a figurative thing to them. But that's what they sign, and then they work for a Sea Org, right? Like the Continental Liaison Office, Western United States, or the American St. Hill Organization, which is its own incorporated church, just like the Church of Scientology in Miami, and their staff members there, but they are committed for the rest of their life. And they're working 24/7, flat out. They're fed, clothed, and birthed by the Sea organization.
Now, I want to make a point. People often make a big deal out of the billion-year contract.
Yeah.
I want to point something out that should be obvious, but it's not always obvious. Mm-hmm. When a person accepts Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, mm-hmm. that's for eternity.
That's right.
Because you expect when you die, you'll spend eternity, trillions and eons of time.
Yeah, forever.
In heaven with God. So I wanted to make the point that 1 billion years, you're making a real commitment as a Sea Org member.
Yes.
But that's only 1 billion years. Christians commit for eternity.
It's a good point.
Well, you have to think about this.
Yeah.
Because to put Scientology in context, mm-hmm. A Sea Org member is not making an eternal commitment like a Christian would be, or even a Muslim.
That's right.
And that's just an interesting data point.
It is an interesting point, yeah.
Now, so there's a hierarchy of public Scientologists.
Yep.
Sometimes they're made fun of, like professional publics.
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
Okay.
By those who have committed themselves and are more dedicated and look down on them. I mean, it's definitely a whole status thing, which is a whole thing in Scientology.
Okay, now, Joe Dokes, our hypothetical Scientologist.
Yep.
Okay, he wants to do grade 0. He's finished his purification, rundown, life repair, other.
Yeah, lower level stuff. Yeah.
Now he's actually getting on the bridge.
Yes.
Okay, now to do grade 0 to clear, do you just pay your money and do it?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a business model sort of thing. It's a customer service thing. They come in. They are told, okay, this is how much auditing you're going to need in order to get from where you are now through these services up to the level of clear, where you won't have a reactive mind anymore, and it'll be a beautiful thing. And that's the highest level that most city level churches can take somebody. So they want to sell them the whole package, right? And the guy really, all he has to do is pay his money, keep his nose clean, follow the rules, and he'll have he'll sail right up those services.
Okay, so for public Scientologists, is the dividing line when they want to jump to OT, it becomes a whole different ballgame.
Correct. Hugely different system.
And see, this is what I want to make clear.
Yeah.
There's a public misconception that it's as easy, you just pay money like you did to go from 0 to clear.
Yep.
You pay money just to go from OT1 up to OT8. It's not like that at all.
No, not even remotely like that. This is where when the rubber meets the road for Scientologists in terms of having to actually become really hardcore, it is all the services above clear, because what they have to do is jump through a lot of hoops. And
Well, walk us through the
yeah,
complexities.
here's how it works. Everything above the level of clear in Scientology is confidential, right? It is considered harmful to you spiritually if you were to find out about it or discover the information before you're quote unquote ready for it. So that's why they take you up to clear. But every service after that, you have to be invited onto. They have to literally issue you an invitation.
So I just can't say, here's 50,000. It's not like that.
No, you have to pay your 50,000, but that only gets you in the door so that you then do what is called eligibility. And then in the eligibility is a series of actions that are taken so that the church is satisfied that you will keep your mouth shut about what you're about to learn about, the confidential material, that you've been a good boy, that you have been forthcoming with them about anyone you know, everything you do, what your life consists of. I mean, this is where some of the paranoia of Scientology kicks in, because they're going to sort of roto-rooter your entire life and put it under a magnifying glass to make sure that everything you're telling them is actually true to their level of satisfaction.
So this necessarily involves sec checking.
This is all about sec checking.
Really?
Yeah, this is security checking, and that's how they roto-rooter somebody, right? Because they put a person on a meter, and the procedure basically, in a nutshell, is asking questions and watching the meter for responses. They don't care what you vocally say. You can say yes, you can say no, but the meter has to respond. And if the meter responds, there is something there that is an answer to the question. If the question is, have you ever stolen an apple? And the meter responds to that question, they're going to pursue it until they get the time you stole an apple. And they don't care if you say, well, I don't know, I don't think so, no, I didn't. But I don't care about that. You just keep looking until you come up with an answer. And the questions they ask you are not, have you ever stolen an apple? The questions are, have you ever had an affair? Are you being, embezzled money from your, job or from the church? Have you lied about the church at all? They are all about finding out if you've gone on the internet and looked at anything anti-Scientology. Are you working for the government, the CIA, the NSA, the FBI? They're very, very paranoid about alphabet organizations and things like that. So they want to know also any familial connections, spouse, family, friends, anybody hostile or antagonistic to Scientology or giving you a hard time about it. So all of these things will be gone over with a fine-tooth comb until they're sure that you're a good little Scientology chicken and you're following all the rules that they have laid out, and you've also paid your money. And during the process of eligibility, if something comes up in these sec checks, and it almost always does, you have to then sit down with an ethics officer. That's the name of their job, ethics officer. And that ethics officer is going to take up with you the things that you answered, that you told them about, and make you, quote unquote, take responsibility for what you did. If you said something bad about David Miscavige, let's say, right? You were found to be critical of David Miscavige. In Scientology, that's a criminal activity to be complaining about David Miscavige. So you will be made to do things to make up the damage for that. And that might entail going around and passing out Way to Happiness booklets on the corner, or bringing 3 people into Scientology to make up for your horrible activity and show that you're a dedicated Scientologist, right? It's all about proving to them you're worthy of being given this confidential information.
Well, let me ask you this. Supposedly, I'm Joe Dokes.
Yep.
I finished clear. I no longer have reactive mind. I want to go on the OT level. So I'm going through my eligibility sec checks.
Yep.
And you're auditing me as Sea Org, and I say, you know what? my parents are, are in their 70s.
Mm-hmm.
They're very unhappy with Scientology. They are staunch Lutherans, and they think Scientology is a demonic cult.
Okay.
They're really opposed to it.
Yeah.
Now, would part of eligibility be for me to disconnect from them? If I couldn't handle them?
If you couldn't handle them, the whole eligibility program will revolve around handling them first. And you'll actually have to pay for an entire course called the PTSSP course. And you'll have to go in the course room and you'll have to do this entire course. And then you'll have to go and do some kind of a PR handling. In other words, get your parents, by hook or by crook, to stop being that way about Scientology. And that could entail you, trying to show them videos or bring them down to the church or whatever it will take to convince them that the Church of Scientology is actually nothing but a bunch of angels and wonderful people trying to save the world, and how dare they ever think badly of it, right? You've got to make that happen. And if you can't make that happen, or you don't make that happen, then it's going to be, well, you tried to handle it and you didn't handle it, or it couldn't be handled and they wouldn't handle, therefore you have to disconnect from them because we can't give you this confidential, wonderful, save you and the world information if your parents are going to be ragging on you.
Now, see, this is an interesting point about disconnection people may not understand. Mm-hmm. It is a weapon Scientology uses.
Oh, yes.
So my burden is I have to get people to agree that Scientology is a wholesome activity, mm-hmm. to not bother me about it, mm-hmm. and I have to bring them into compliance.
That's right.
So this gets into something almost emotional extortion. So I have to say to my hardcore parents, look, this is something I really want to do. And if push comes to shove, I have to say, look, if you're going to get my way with Scientology, I can't talk to you. I can't have a relationship with you.
That's right.
So the church is forcing you into an either or. You either pick the church and your OT levels, or you disconnect.
That's right.
And many Scientologists, unfortunately, choose to disconnect.
That's right.
And the church destroys families, and that's a policy. And as much as Scientology lies about it, and the church does lie about it
all the time,
disconnection is a part of, can be a part of eligibility.
Oh, very much so. And it comes up all the time. And I imagine these days it's probably coming up more than ever, because look at how much information there is out there about Scientology. The truth is, most people outside of Scientology know more about it than the people who are in Scientology. So the parents actually, in this case we're talking about, actually have fact-based evidentiary reasons to think the way they think. But the Scientologist is convinced he knows more than they do because he is doing Scientology. But he doesn't actually know because of all the levels of information control and everything else that goes on, and the lies, the deceptions that he is fed as a Scientologist by the church. He has a false idea of who and what L. Ron Hubbard is and what he accomplished. He has a false idea about David Miscavige, current leader of the church. And he has a way, way skewed idea about what the Church of Scientology is actually doing in the real world to bring about its goals of, clearing the planet, making the world without insanity, war, and criminality. The church is doing almost nothing to accomplish those goals, but it constantly feeds its members false and exaggerated information that it's doing so much good works in the world to make it a better place. So he's got this really strange, exaggerated, weird idea about what Scientology is doing, while his parents look at that and go, "What are you talking about? That's not what's going on," and they actually know.
So my Christian father could go online and read. Mm-hmm. He could call Rick Ross.
Yep.
He could contact former members. So my Christian parents would have a clear idea. Now, going back into the Sea Org mentality.
Yeah.
I come into you and I say, hey, look, I've disconnected from my parents. Mm-hmm. They're just not going to get on with the program. They think it's satanic. I want to do my bridge. So I've disconnected. What does it involve to actually disconnect? What do you make me do? How does
Some
it work?
kind of yeah. There's a formal process actually. It's writing a letter. It's or an email or something, right? It's somehow there has to almost be like evidence that you've done this. The church is going to want that. They can't. They're not going to just going to take your word for it. So you have to basically the basic way to do it is what's called a disconnection letter. And you write them and you say, look, I love you, I wish it didn't have to be this way, or whatever you are going to say to them. But the bottom line is, but we're over. You know, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, until unless you come to your senses.
Exactly. Until, you know, and I, you know, again, the person might, you know, say whatever he's going to say to express regret about this, but the onus of the disconnection is always going to be on the person that they're disconnecting from. It's not the Scientologist who is doing this. It is the parents, let's say in this case, who are forcing him to do it. You're making me disconnect from you.
Yeah, I don't want to, but
I have no choice because you won't stop antagonizing me about Scientology or whatever. So it's always not their fault. It's not their responsibility that this is happening, and it's never the church's fault. It's on the person who is against the church for whatever reason.
okay, so I've disconnected from my parents.
Yep.
Now, when do I actually, now I've completed my eligibility.
Okay.
Now, there's the idea being, or the Scientology procedure being invited.
Yes.
Now, so you've completed your eligibility. How does the invitation onto the OT levels work?
Well, what happens outside of your knowledge and awareness is an entire package is put together by the people who are administering the whole line. And I won't get into all the technical terms of their post names and all that because it doesn't really matter. But all these people are working to take all the information you gave, all the handlings you did, the courses you did, the money you paid, and they're going to expect you to be forking over money on donations and passing out books and doing whatever they say you need to do. All that is written down and put together into a compiled package, which then goes to at least 3 people, and they have to go through all of it and approve that they are signing off that you're okay. And then it goes to, and the final person to do that is a representative from the Religious Technology Center, which is RTC, which is David Miscavige's little group. And those are the guys who run Scientology, and this is how they run it. This is one of the ways they do it, is they control who has access to this information. And once they've arbitrated that you are okay, they sign off on it. It goes back to the people who are delivering the confidential materials, and they then call you and say, you're approved! And you come on down, and it's a big joyous experience because you've had to, you know, it's never an easy process for people to go through all these hoops. And then they issue you this invitation, and you get to say, start OT1. And here's how this is an eligibility thing. And one more thing about this is that if you stop and take a break between services, like let's say you do OT1 and you do OT2 and you do OT3, because those are usually done rapid fire 1, 2, 3, and then you have to go make some more money. You know, you can't afford to go on to OT4 and OT5 because that's another $10,000, $20,000. In fact, for OT4 and 5, it's more like about $50,000. You're going to go off and make some money. You're going to be gone for, you know, let's say 6 months or a year. You come back, you got to do that whole eligibility process again.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you have to be invited onto OT4 and 5. And if you break up your services, if you're not continuously on service through that whole time, then they're going to want to know what you've been up to for the last year. You know, what kind of horrible things have you been doing?
Disaffected.
That's right. You've been reading the internet, watching South Park. Is your friend giving you shit again? Did you talk to your parents who you disconnected from? You know, did you get a Christmas present from them? Oh my God, did you keep it? What's the matter with you? You're supposed to be disconnected from these people. You know, this kind of thing, right? Again, they're going to roto-rooter and magnifying glass your life all over again. And you are paying for the privilege of all of this, because when they're security checking you, that's by the hour. You're paying for it. And then, you're having to maybe do some more courses or buy more books or do more donations. So this is where a lot of money goes into the church's coffers from this eligibility process. And this whole thing isn't on that grade chart. You don't see it on there, but it's there. It's one of those little hidden gotchas that they do. And this happens routinely. The way people usually run when they go through the OT levels, this confidential stuff, is they do OT 1, 2, and 3, and they'll maybe 4, and they'll take a break. And then they'll come back and they'll do 4 and 5, or they'll do 5, and then they'll take a break. And then they have to go out to Florida to do 6 and 7, and then they'll take a break, or they try to get on to 8, but they have to go to the ship. And eligibility occurs every time between these points.
And what's interesting, we were talking about before the show, I have the document posted at the Scientology Money Project. Mm-hmm. People talk about Xenu body thetans, right? That's incident 2 of OT3. Mm-hmm. And they often, and I want to clear up this misconception, the public often chides OTs for not being willing to talk about Xenu.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Now let's explore this.
Yep.
When you start OT3, or almost any Scientology level, you sign a bond.
Exactly.
There's a
that's
bond
right.
on OT3. It's basically a liquidated damages clause. Mm-hmm. If an OT3 talks about anything on OT3, he or she has to pay $100,000 per occurrence.
Yep.
So if you talked about OT3 3 times, that's $300,000.
That's right.
So a couple of things. If you talk about the OT levels, you pay a $100,000 fine per occurrence. You'll likely be disconnected.
Oh, yeah.
And declared a suppressive person.
That's right.
That means you lose your family, you lose everything.
Yep.
So to be fair to OTs, they have a gun to their head. Metaphorically speaking.
That is
the church
correct,
has a gun to their head. They don't want to talk about it. They can't talk about it. The risk is too great. They could be destroyed.
That's right. And those bonds exist on every one of those confidential levels. There are a couple confidential levels before you even get to OT for some people, and then every one of those OT levels, and you sign those bonds at every one of them. Yep. So there's no loopholes here. There's no way out of this, and what you're talking about is actually very, very important, because it's part of all of this stuff. I mean, between all the eligibility and the sec checking and the jumping through all the hoops, it's more indoctrination is what it is, right? And what we're talking about is Steve Hassan's BITE model, the behavior control and information control, right? Emotional control. I mean, all of these things come together to create a mindset in these OTs that it's not just, oh, this information is harmful if people aren't ready for it, but I'm going to owe all this money, and I'm going to get in all this trouble, and I'm going to get disconnected, because you mess around with the security of the OT levels. I mean, Hubbard has numerous policies about how you're dooming the entire universe to hell, and yourself, if you even whisper any of this stuff.
Yeah, and I would use the term, as you move up into the OT levels, the church is tightening the noose around your neck.
Brilliant way of putting it.
Thank you. Paradoxically, you think you're becoming more free, but you're becoming more of a slave.
That's exactly right.
Now, one question I asked you that I thought the answer was so intriguing.
Yeah.
I'm Joe Dokes, and I'm clear. Let's rewind back to clear.
Yep.
Okay. I'm Joe Dokes. I'm a clear. Mm-hmm. I'm on vacation in Bermuda, and I'm online on the beach. I see the OT levels.
Yep.
I'm at some site called xenu.net. And I know I shouldn't read it, but temptation.
That's right.
I'll just take a peek.
Yep.
Suddenly, 2 hours later, I've read all the OT levels, and I'm going, oh my God. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens to me as a Scientologist? I go back in, I want to do the OT levels. Mm-hmm. During eligibility, I sec check, I say, look, I read the OT levels.
Yep, because they do ask about that on the eligibility. Have you ever been, they're going to ask questions like, have you ever been out security That's what they call it, out security, right? Have you ever been out security with confidential information? Have you ever, looked at the OT levels on the internet? I mean, they're going to directly ask you about this. And if it comes up that you have, you will not get past eligibility.
So I can never do the OT
Period.
levels.
You can never do it. And they don't care how much money you pay them. That is verboten. It is just, nope, there's the door, goodbye, right?
So am I declared?
No, they won't declare you, but they will declare you a security risk, right? They'll declare you that. They won't declare you a suppressive person unless you start, getting, disaffected about it. They're just going to sit down and explain it to you, really, and it's very black and white. They're going to show you various policy letters, like one called Advanced Courses Violations or Advanced Course Security or whatever, where Hubbard says one instance of out security and that person is denied any further access to confidential information ever. Period. End of story. And there is no amount of amends you can do to come back
So
from
no
that.
amount of crying and begging. I've lost the OT levels this lifetime.
Yeah, no.
Maybe some other lifetime. Chris, an interesting word to explain Scientology language, there's a prefix called out.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so you can be out security, out technology,
Out ethics,
PR,
yeah.
out ethics.
Yep. I don't even know where that comes from. It's only in Scientology that I've heard that, and it just means it's a violation of, or it's you did not follow the agreements of, and it's all those terms.
Well, it's,
Out 2D.
yes, out to be.
That means you had sexual relations with somebody you shouldn't have, or you did something sexually that you weren't supposed to. It's out 2D.
You can be out int. Up on the OT levels.
Yes, that's a technical thing, but it has to do with out of body experiences. So it's not totally your fault when you're out in, but it's a term Hubbard came up with.
Well, he uses this. Hubbard liked to create language, so
Yes.
he speaks of certain outnesses.
Yes,
Outnesses.
That's right, and out points and plus points in Hubbard's system of logic, which he does a whole breakdown on. If there's something you observe or see that is what he calls non-optimum, it shouldn't be there, but it is. Like you walk into the kitchen and there's still dirty dishes on the table from the dinner the night before. That would be an out point. Those dishes shouldn't be there, right? They should have been put away. So, and Scientologists use these terms like all the time for anything that they think is wrong, is not the way it's supposed to be.
It's an out point.
It's an out point. Yes.
Another funny term that I like in Scientology, they have what's called the ideal scene.
Yes.
Okay, there's the existing scene and the ideal scene.
That's right.
And one of Hubbard's terms is something can mark a departure from the ideal scene.
That's right. That's right.
So you see on Tom Cruise's Leaked Go to Guns videos, he talks about the ideal scene. Mm-hmm. So we have an existing scene, and we have to use Scientology ethics to get it to the ideal scene.
That's right.
Going back to our OT, so Joe Dokes, if he reads the levels, he'll never get OT levels in his life.
Correct.
Now, if he's a good guy and he doesn't, he goes up. He's invited onto OT7.
Yep.
And you could stay on OT7 for 20 years.
That's right. But get this.
Yeah.
Every 6 months, you have to go back to Flag in Clearwater. There's no other place on the planet you can go. You have to go to Clearwater and do what's called a 6-month check, or what they now call a refresher.
Yes, a refresher.
You have to go get your refresher. And they kind of rake you over the coals and give you a little sec check, and you have to pay for it, and you have to pay for accommodations and food because you have to stay on base. They're at the Clearwater facilities.
Now, isn't a 6 month? Doesn't it cost about $25,000, something like that?
It can. It depends on how much sec checking you get. Yeah.
So really, to stay on OT7, which can take a long time, OT7 is the level where you're solo auditing.
That's right.
Okay.
You do it at home.
And but people stay on it for years and years.
Oh, I don't know anyone who. Minimum. The lowest I've ever heard of somebody being on that level was, I think it was 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And I know people who were on it for 10.
Oh, absolutely. 20.
And this is going in session every day, multiple times a day, auditing yourself in your home. So no drinking, no partying, anything like that. And this is all day, every single day. And then every 6 months, you got to physically go back to Clearwater and get a little sec check, and they check you out and make sure you haven't been looking at the internet, talking to anybody, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, so you could pay 30 to 50,000 a year to stay on the level.
Exactly. This is a huge cash cow for Scientology.
Of course it is.
Huge.
And that's why David Miscavige has always wanted 10,000 people on solo nuts. He's saying, Hubbard said that would be the amount of people you'd need to uninturbulate the interbulated theta, reverse the ratio.
That's right. That's right. Which is all Scientology speak for making the world a much better place.
Well, it's like the idea of Hare Krishna is mass meditating.
Yeah.
It's just that kind of thing.
That's right.
But if you had 10,000 people that were giving you 50,000 a year, that's a lot of money. You could put the church in cruise control.
Exactly.
Rake in a lot of money, not do anything else on sec checks.
And this is why Flag is the church's cash cow. That is why they are the money source, because of these OTs doing this stuff.
Oh yeah, that's a huge amount of money.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you go in for your refreshers. Now, one thing I wanted to just note, Tony Ortega, a blog post this week, and we're in the week of June 1, he posted a note of the passing of Dennis Clark.
Yes.
Who was a freedom of...
he was, I think, the first or I think the second Freedom Medal winner.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And my condolences to his family. I do mean that he when he had a stroke in 2011, it crippled him. And he wrote a letter to Jeff Pomerantz, another, freedom.
Oh, another Freedom Medal winner.
Yeah, Freedom Medal winner.
Minor like D-list celebrity in Scientology.
Yeah, he's the announcer.
Yeah, he does all the MC.
And now it's, that kind of thing.
That's right.
Really over the top announcing.
Scientology is taking over the world, beginning in Bulgaria this year with international expansion. I know.
I can't figure out why David Miscavige likes this over the top, cheesy game show. Like, give me a break.
I know, it's crazy.
Okay, so so Dennis
he wrote a letter to this guy.
Yeah, Dennis Clark writes a letter, and he actually says, "I've been on OT5 since 1985."
Wow.
He dies in 2017.
Wow.
Now this raises a point.
Yeah.
Some OTs have to turn in their OT materials.
Yes.
And say, look, I can't afford to be on the level.
That happens on 7 all the time. That's right.
And you just don't have the money.
That's right.
So you're stuck in park. Because Scientology is a pay-as-you-go religion.
Yep.
And you pay up front in cash. And I might add legally, here's something very deceptive about the church. The church has a term called monies on account.
Yes.
Open a flow with the theta universe. Put monies on account.
That's right.
Okay, now this is a very misleading term. If I tell you to put money on account, you think you have a bank account, that money for future services is on account. It doesn't work like that. You actually sign a legal contract where it's an irrevocable donation.
Right.
And in legal terms, you have given that money away irrevocably. Under certain conditions, you may ask for a refund or a repayment, but chances are you're not going to get it.
No, it's all the legal language that you sign up with in those contracts. It's at the discretion of the church as to whether they're going to give you that money back or not. And really, as far as I can tell, the decision point for them on refunds and repayments is how much PR value is this? What negative PR value is this going to have for us if we don't pay this person back?
Yeah, and they told the IRS that refunds and repayments are based on abandon or meet. And this is so critical.
Explain that.
Well, when they filed for their application for 1993 IRS 501c3 tax exemption, the Church of Scientology told the IRS, we handle refunds and repayments on an abandon or meet basis. This is important. We'll either meet the request for refund or repayment or we'll abandon it. The church's goal, and it's a bad faith goal, is to get you to abandon your request. If you abandon a legal endeavor, then it's thrown out of court. So in other words, if I'm the Church of Scientology and I keep refusing your request for a repayment of money on account, and I string you along for 2 or 3 years,
which
and I
they
just
do.
tell you no, and then you just give up.
That's right.
You go into apathy and you give up.
That's right.
You've legally abandoned it. and you can't go back into court.
Got it.
So what I encourage people listening trying to get a repayment of monies on the account is do not abandon your request. Put in writing, I am not abandoning my request. Even if you send in an email or a letter every month or every week, keep it alive.
Yep. In fact, this is really good because not even knowing this, I've helped 2 people get refunds, and not even knowing any of this, this was how I helped them. Though it was constant, not speaking with the church members politely, not being raging with them, not screaming at them, but insistent. I said calm insistence and continual insistence is how you get it back. And I guess I was accidentally complying with this point.
And I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you do not abandon your request.
Absolutely.
If you need legal advice, seek the advice of a
course.
lawyer.
Yeah.
But I know many people who've left the church who turned in their OT7 materials.
Yep.
Because they just couldn't afford the refreshers.
That's right.
And they also just didn't want to play the game anymore of $50,000 a year. Because what I had many people tell me is I went back for my 6-month refresher, and I'm paying $25,000, and on top of that, when I go there, they're regging me.
That's right.
Everyone and their dog is regging me. Increase your IES status, patron status. Donate to the L. Ron Hubbard Auditorium, which by the way, the idea of an LRH auditorium, they need that like a hole in the head.
Right.
They can't even fill out Ruth Eckert Hall, and they're going to build this monstrous hall.
Right.
On my OT It Is Great blog, just as an aside, I created a thing called the Great Hall of Exact Data. And I wanted to be like evoke a Soviet era.
Yes, that is so Orwellian.
where in those old pictures in the Soviet era, you'd see these big halls with the big banners, and they're so dour.
Yes.
So they might as well create a Great Hall of Exact Data where you'll get the exact data needed. And maybe we can end up on that.
Yeah.
Scientology claims to give you the exact data needed, but it's actually propaganda.
Exactly.
Mind control.
That's right.
Undue influence, threats.
That's right. Well, your analogy of tightening the noose was actually just perfect, because that's exactly what's happening with people as they go up those OT levels, and it is only by forcibly removing that noose, by turning in their materials, for example, and just saying, look, I'm done, that somebody can escape that. Because the longer they try to cooperate with the church and play ball and do what's expected of them by the church, the tighter and tighter that noose becomes. And that really is absolutely the truth. I watched it happen over and over again.
It is. Let's put a finer point on it. When you sign those contracts going into Scientology, you gave them your consent to be governed.
Yep.
What's important, what I want to emphasize is consent belongs to you, the individual. When you resign from the Church of Scientology, you put it in writing to the IJC, as many terminals as you want.
IJC being the International Justice Chief.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
But what you have to say is, I specifically withdraw my consent to be governed by your rules. I am no longer a Scientologist. Because part of the repayment refund cycle is they want to keep you under their governance. Now, once you revoke your consent to be governed, they no longer have the right.
Right.
Under the First Amendment, under the law, they do not have the right to do these things to you.
That's right.
That's where it begins to become problematic, because if you're no longer a member of the church and they're spending tax-exempt dollars to harass you, that's where you report them to the IRS. That's where you go to the local police, the FBI, whoever you feel you need to go to, whatever appropriate agency, saying, I'm not a member of this organization. They're using 501c3 tax-exempt dollars to harass me. This is a violation. They're not allowed to do it. Now, the church tries to say things like pre-trial discovery or all that. It doesn't matter. Ignore their threats. Just report it. It's important that it's reported. Basically, it goes like this. Church of Scientology is legal all the way in, so you have to use legal on the way out.
Good point.
And that's what I would say.
Good point.
Make a definitive. You have to make a definitive, very affirmative action. I hereby withdraw my consent to be governed. And that's what I'd emphasize to people listening. If you're going to quit the church, quit 100%. You're either in or out. And that's the church saying that.
Yeah.
It's not me.
No, it's a very good point.
And what's frightening and unwilling to me, Hubbard said, if they're going to resign, let them resign quick. Otherwise, consider that they've enrolled for the duration of the universe.
That's right.
And they're here along with the rest of us.
That's right.
And I say
win or die in the attempt.
I say that, and no, it's not like that. You're allowed to resign. You're not in for the duration of the universe. You don't have to be. You don't have to put up with any of their nonsense. You're free to resign and walk out.
Perfect. Perfect. And on that note, I think we actually are at a good place on this. So this was great conversation.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Too.
And I hope everybody out there, got something from this because we covered some pretty important material about how this stuff works, up and down the levels of Scientology. So give me your feedback on this, guys. I want your commentary at sensiblyspeaking.com or just leave comments on the YouTube channel or wherever. But hey, good, bad, or sideways, let us know what you thought, what else you'd like to hear or find out about here on this podcast. And of course, if you're on iTunes, do me a favor and give me a rating on there because reviews and stuff are always helpful. All right, I will talk to you guys again soon. Thanks for coming around. Bye-bye for this week.